with the campaign. We've obviously the nomination period is now over and ballot papers start hitting people's doorsteps on Monday. But throughout the nomination period, we increased the branches that supported Paul and supported the United Left candidate by 14% from this time 5 years ago. And Apprentices support dropped by 25%. There's a huge move away from Apprentice nationally, and we need to sort of really build on that. And that's still just, it's not even half of the union's branches that nominated at all. So there's obviously sort of the great unreached of the union that we need to get out to. But we've started the financial appeals now. Every branch in the country has had posters of the financial appeal and tried to get money for redress, and that's started coming in. We've had a number of apologies tonight from people from Newham who I'm not that sure they're that pleased. They've got all the councillors in Newham, whereas I come from Newham as well, and it's a rotten borough, but we'll leave that there. But we've had pledges of money from Newham anyway, and from Kensington and Chelsea, specifically London, and lots of other people couldn't be here tonight. And apart from that, as Paul mentioned, just touched briefly on the vitriol that he faced. He didn't want to go into too much detail. I know one of the reporters asked a question about it earlier, but the blogs and stuff that have been set up, purely called Positively Prentice and things like that, there's nothing to say about Prentice on them at all. There's nothing to say about any of the other candidates that got on the ballot paper or the candidates that tried to get on the ballot paper. It's all about Paul Holmes, and the vitriol on there is rabid, if you like, and it's all, who does he think he is, that he thinks he can run a union of 1.3 million, and he's just a branch secretary. He's just one of those workers. He didn't go to university like us. He's not got the experience to run. And we need to tackle that kind of animosity, because we're not just workers, we are the lay leadership of the union, and we need to take back that control. So I'll open it up. We're going to do a bit of the organisation bit towards the end, but I'll just open it up for some comments and stuff now, if people want to indicate if they want to.
Just a matter of we really need to bang the rank and file, and all right, if we get some votes for the General Secretary, it makes a massive difference. John mentioned the case. I'll tell you, our members in Tower Hamlets College, 6 weeks ago, we lodged a request for a ballot to strike. I'm told by our union I have to wait till tomorrow to make sure there are really compulsory redundancies when people will be made redundant in 6 weeks' time. We have to change that inside our union, and I wish I could say that our members feel so confident and strong they'll walk out the door anyway. At the moment they're not confident enough to do that. If a General Secretary had backed them and said to our officials, your job is to back members when they want to fight, they would. And that's the difference it can make. And people have talked about the election. Look at that cabinet. Eric Pickles, in charge of local government, who was a Tory in Bradford, who pioneered privatisation, who is now in Brentwood in Essex, the man who said he has to claim overnight expenses to come to Parliament because it's very hard to get from Brentwood to Westminster for 9:30 in the morning. A man who championed Essex and Hammersmith, the Tory boroughs that are showing the next wave of privatisation. That's what we face. Laws in the Treasury of Osborne, ex-banker, itching at the bit to see how they're going to come to the public sector. And they're looking at Greece, and look at Greece. Pay freeze, pay cuts, a tax on your pensions, that's what they got in line for us. And I'll tell you, who leads the union makes a difference. In 2005, I'm of the view that without Mark Savotka in the leadership of the PCS, we would never have got near to joint strike action across the public sector to defend our pensions. But we did. I think with Paul at the head of Unison, we would be in a very powerful position to talk about following up on what the PCS have already done and been marginalised by the big three unions, about building the kind of unity across public sector which sends a very powerful message to this government, which doesn't have a mandate. Come for our pensions, our pay, our jobs and our services. You are going to face a real fight. And if you did that, people talk about the problems, this is a fantastic opportunity for unions to get organised. People talked about the vote. Faced with the threat of a Tory government, people went back to Labour. That tells you people want to go back to their unions as well. They want to go back to where they think will defend working class people. It should be a fantastic opportunity. So the point of this meeting is to organise. It's no good having here a talking shop. We have to turn out a vote for Paul Holmes. 58 branches, representing 150,000 people nominated Paul. We have to fight for as many votes as possible in those branches, but to do more than that. We need to be outside every town hall, we need to be outside every hospital. Any of you who are a member in the Unison aren't here, you need to stay behind and say what you're going to do. And to be honest, it's no good just saying we'll do a bit in our activists in our branch. You've got to say what are we going to do about the hospital branch down the road from us? Where else do we know people? They are using the whole machinery of our union bureaucracy and, by the way, of other union bureaucracies, to back Dave Prentice. They're like a mutual club between them. We have only got what people like us in this room, and all of you have got to commit yourself. Ballot papers go out Monday. The next 2 weeks, one of the key things, if you want to react to the general election, is we have to get a left vote inside Unison General Secretary. So stay behind, get organised. I think Paul has got us. It's a very open election. Prentice must feel, if I was Prentice, I'd feel people would be scared, they're going to maybe go for him. But people are worried and they want answers. But a big vote for Paul will send a massive message. It will send a message to the bureaucracy, send a message to our members, it will send a message to the government. So we've had a good discussion, let's organise.
This is what's going to happen, right? Don't get too wound up about Greece, right? Spain, Portugal, Ireland, next 6 months, all three of them's coming next, without a shadow of a doubt. There is nowhere for them to hide. In Kirklees, we've got 84% density. That's why we don't get any publicity. That's why you never hear Unison or Paul Holmes mentioned it. I have never, in 36 years, had my name or the branch's name mentioned in any publicity in this union. And yet, every branch says, how do you get 84% density? It's hard work, and it's really hard work. But if you do the work, it ain't hard work. And if you don't do the work, it doesn't happen. The majority, after the miners' strike, no miner would have gone down a pit in Britain before the miners' strike without being a member of a union. They said, if you ever spot to them, they just say, I'm not going down that hole without some protection. The majority of coal miners in the Notts coalfield are not in any union. And that is just despondency, isn't it? That is just failure and defeat. And the ballot, I think ballot people start receiving ballot papers tomorrow. If the last election is anything to go by, it officially opens on Monday. But because it's 1.5 million or 1.4 million, it takes days to send them out. So I think some people will start getting them tomorrow. And if there were a 16% turnout in the last election, I'm not interested in that. I wouldn't have stood for the election if it's going to be a 16% turnout. I don't care if none of that 16% vote for me. You need to get a 30 and 40% turnout, you win the election. That's where you win the election, not arguing about the people who normally vote in an election. And I think somebody made a point about the millions of people being victimised. I think it's a really important point. Anybody that's read anything about James Hoffa, who was the leader of the Teamsters in the 50s and 60s, somebody said to him, we've got to get rid of Farrell Dobbs in Minneapolis who wrote Teamster Rebellion. He says, don't get rid of him, go and learn from him. The bloke builds the union. And I think that is the test of a leader. If you see somebody standing up to speak in a meeting who's talking sense, who's got support, a test of a leader is, I need to talk to that person's going to do something in this union, that person's going to take us forward. Or the opposite is, that's an opponent, that's somebody I need to get rid of, that's somebody I need to stamp on. And that's the difference, isn't it? Leadership is supposed to inspire people. And we had a strike in Leeds been striking, it lasted 11 weeks. And if Gordon Brown thinks it would hard work, and I'm worried about this woman in Rochdale, right? But he should have gone there to that comedy club in Leeds and spoke to 450 bin men every Thursday dinner time. And the chair of the Leeds branch is quite an amusing character, and the jury will be amused by this. But nobody in Leeds has any idea where Plymouth is. I'm not really sure I really know where Plymouth is. And this lad's from Cornwall, I went to the chair of the branch. Every time I got up to speak, they wouldn't listen to him. They just kept chanting, Green Army, Green Army, Green Army. And he goes, what, they're shouting out from Cornwall? They don't know, but they club, you know, they don't know what it is. But if you think one woman in Rochdale Mini Marketplace is a problem, you ought to stand up in front of 400 bin men who don't want to know what you've got to say, unless you're telling them that they've won. But what's interesting is, no full-time official other than Keith Sonnet, the Deputy General Secretary, on his way to somewhere else, and the international officer visited that picket line in 11 weeks. They were on all-out indefinite strike. You don't know it's going to be 11 weeks when you start, do you? No miner knew it was going to last a year. Some knew it was going to be a long one, but you don't know. And yet no national official of this union went to that picket line, and it's an absolute disgrace. So they were desperate to see people. They were, you know, you're in these bin depots are in the middle of the nowhere. There's no people going past them, etc., etc. And that's how we need to change the union, and that's how we'll change the union. 56% of local government workers are not in the trade union. And it's not their fault. Only those with no vision think it's their fault. Because I'll tell you from 36 years experience as a trade union official, the number of people who don't want to join a union is minimal. There might be people who have had no experience of a union, who don't come from that background, but the only people I've ever met who are hostile to trade unions are people who've had a bad experience in another union somewhere else.